Okay, well, back to the New York Augmented Reality Meetup. It's very good to have you all here. And we have some excellent speakers tonight, and really think you are going to enjoy. Greg, welcome again. Grammy, Jeremy, hello guys. And we'll get started in a second as folks trickle in. Feel free to let the people in from the waiting room. Cool. Dave, welcome. Hey, Jamie. Welcome, guys. It's good to have you here. So we are excited to have you at tonight's New York Augmented Reality Meetup. Barry and I worked hard on organizing tonight's event, and we really think that you're going to love it. Here's the agenda for tonight. Let's see here. I see that. All right, cool. Hey, Caitlin, happy you're here. So we'll start it with some meetup announcements. Then we will hear the latest news with Matthew Olson. And then we'll go into the presentations. We'll hear from Louis Jebb, Caitlin Krause, and Daniel Kharlas, and Trent Clews-de Castella. Am I on mute?
You're good. Can you?
Oh, okay. I got a message that I was on mute. Sorry. Okay. And that's the agenda. Awesome. And I also want to thank the wonderful co-organizer of the group, Barry Seff. Without you, Barry, these events would not be possible. So it would be an honor if you can say a few words of wisdom with the group.
Oh, there you unmuted me. Well, now I can say the words. Here are the words of wisdom. There are many words. Yes, thanks to everyone for joining. Sorry, I was not the full participant last time at the amazing physical get-together with Shuli and Andy. So I hope we'll have some more of those in the coming year. And wishing everyone a wonderful holiday season. Happy Thanksgiving to those in the U.S. or abroad.
Thank you, Barry, and definitely post your LinkedIn profile in the chat so folks can reach out to you and hear some more inspirational words of wisdom. Thank you. So this leads me to our group. This past month, we are proud to have reached 2,000 members. An incredible milestone, and we couldn't have done it without the group's support. So thank you for helping us make our events possible, and we look forward to continuing to grow and hosting more events in the future. Last month, we did an AR art walk with Shuli Sadeh, the creator of Bird's Eye View AR, and we got a tour of her awesome site-specific installation, Bird's Eye View. And thank you for everyone that came out. And thank you, Matthew Chang, for all the awesome photos that you took at the meetup. It was really a nice event, and glad you were able to join. And then our next meetup is on Monday, December 19th, remote, where we have speakers joining, including Eric Johnson, who was supposed to be here tonight, but pushed off till next month. And some other speakers will be announced. So if you want to be part of that meetup, you can take a look through our meetup page. So appreciate it. And another announcement, although AR is an exciting industry, we realize that behind the rose-colored holographic glasses are isolated developers and designers looking for a way to connect. So if you'd like to be involved in the group in any capacity to help organize future events, or would be interested in sharing a project or demo with the group, definitely reach out to either me or Barry, and we'd love to get the opportunity to chat with you. And last meetup, we had some unsolicited comments, and we'll be closely monitoring the chat and disabling it in case we need to. And we're also disabling the ability to draw on the screen. So we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. If we need to disable chat, you could reach out to me directly, but right now we'll keep it open. And if you'd like to share any comments or ask any questions after each presentation, we'll be hosting a 5-minute Q&A. So feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat, and we'll share it with the speakers after the presentations to continue the conversation and give you the chance to interact. Now, without further ado, I'm excited to move on to a segment that I typically do, but I assure you it will be significantly more interesting. We are very lucky to have with us Matthew Olson here with us tonight. Matthew is the founder of Virtual Vector, a new independent newsletter on immersive technology, a writer and reporter based in New York City. Olson previously worked for The Information, USgamer.net, and Dig. In addition to running Virtual Vector, he is currently a graduate student at NYU's Interactive Telecommunications program. So without further ado, I'm excited to have Matthew Olson here to share some of the latest and greatest in AR.
Hello. All right. Just want to first check that everyone can hear me before I go ahead and share my screen. Am I coming through, Andy?
Yep, sounds good.
Perfect. All right. Let me do the share screen here with, let's get this window. All right, because I can do a window and then I can do slideshow. Is that showing everyone a full screen slideshow? Yes? Perfect. All right. Well, much like last time I was here in a previous life, Andy has set me up to do this, take over this spot for him that he usually does. But I can't say that I'll necessarily do a much better job. I wanted to keep things short. So this is not supposed to be comprehensive as to what's happened in the past month. It's supposed to share you a little bit of my perspective and take on things, which is what you get in the newsletter in Virtual Vector. So it's a weekly newsletter that I just launched. It's still in its early days on all sorts of things under the umbrella of immersive tech, XR, whatever you want to call it. But I'll try to keep today's presentation focused on squarely on AR and what that means. And it's an independent reader-supported newsletter. I launched this myself using a service called Ghost.io, not Substack, but similar idea. You can feel free to sign up for free. Something I'm trying to do relative or different to other newsletters that are paid subscriber-supported newsletters is always give you a huge chunk or two of the newsletter that comes out each week for free, because I think it just helps this space grow. The more, I'm not going to say that my perspective or reporting or sort of aggregation is necessarily better than anybody else's, but the more of it there is there, the more information that can reach people who want to learn more about this industry or make informed decisions about it, the better. You can see there a little quote in italics that's from my sort of introductory post. I just want to make sure that if it's not something brand new that I'm bringing to you, if it's sort of my take on the week's news or something, that it will make it such that you can have an easier and more enjoyable time kind of figuring out, like, where do I think this particular thread of technology is headed and so forth. And that link there, NYAR November, if you do decide that you'd like to sign up and pay for the newsletter, follow that link and you'll get a discount on the first 2 months of the regular, subscriber level, which is, I think, it'll be $2 for your first 2 months each, which is relative to $6. I'll spare you the details there. Let's talk about what happened this month. And of course, we're going to start with one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest company in the space, Meta. Now, I wouldn't normally talk about a headset that most people are probably going to use, at least at these early days, for VR. Now, granted, I know many developers are working on things that fall into AR or MR, prototyping with this, and are very excited to. They kind of want to see the Pro become Meta's AR development test bed. But so far, I think from a lot of folks who I've trusted in the space, and also from my own, albeit brief, personal experience using the Pro, this raises a lot of questions about, whether pass-through mixed reality is going to be what I think many of the people in this group might be interested in terms of like the best possible sort of AR experience, even as just a developer for AR. I was kind of shocked when I put it on to see the state of, the color reprojection and depth quality of the pass-through. I kind of, I'd seen better, of course, obviously available for more money, not in a standalone form factor. I'm not trying to put down anything that way. But I think there's a long ways to go. And a lot of that could happen over software, but whether or not the Pro is going to be this sort of mid-step between a Quest 2 and eventual AR glasses for Meta remains to be seen. And of course, one of the things that complicates that factor, at least in the case of this company, is the fact that they just laid off over 11,000 people as a result of really not things precipitated by, we're not going to talk about the metaverse much today, but it had less to do with that than it had to do with the state of the overall economy and the state of its ads business. But of course, Reality Labs is not spared. We learned from a report in Reuters that Meta is under the umbrella of Reality Labs, the AR, VR, and everything else hardware division is winding down the Portal smart home devices as well as smartwatch projects, which if you've been following their research and acquisitions, you know Meta really wants to pair AR glasses eventually with wrist-based neural input. So that smartwatch was going to be a way to get into that market and start testing some of those things out. Now that development, anyone who's staying around is being shifted over to AR glasses. That might still be the case, but that changes up their potential release window for these things over the next few years significantly. Another thing here that I don't think has gotten enough note is that, in the research division, which is sort of like a separate matter from just like Reality Labs working on products, AR, that kind of thing, they ended up laying off a bunch of people from a probability team focused on AI, including chip design. And well, why would we talk about chip design this week? Well, within the last week, we also had a huge announcement from Qualcomm at their annual Snapdragon Summit, where we finally get a good look at Qualcomm has come out here consistently, and given how widespread their chips are and how strong they're pushing with their developer platforms with Snapdragon Spaces, I know we have at least one Qualcomm partner or representatives of one in attendance here tonight. But the push for, hey, we're your XR chip provider always comes at odds with, well, AR people want something that look like my glasses, and you can't just slap a giant mobile sort of descended processor in there. It has to be a little bit more purpose built. So Snapdragon introduced the AR Gen 1 chips, plural. It's going to have a main processor, a co-processor that's usually going to be in the bridge of the nose, and then also a separate Wi-Fi chip. Moving to a 4 nanometer process, of course, you get power and efficiency gains there. And of course, right away they're saying, hey, we're working with all of these top OEMs, these contenders that want to be at the forefront of making AR glasses today. And they also, I think it's worth noting here, and I haven't seen much analysis on this, and I don't know if I necessarily have anything that insightful to say about it either, but they revealed this outdoor AR headset reference design that they're working on with Niantic and showed a brief video of it. We still are kind of short on details as to exactly like how this thing is working, how long they've been at this sort of form factor you see on the right, relative to when the AR2 Gen 1 stuff started to come online. But it's worth noting that in March 2021, they teased something to the left there with a very tightly cropped picture. HTC could learn a thing or two for the hyping from that, of what looked more like glasses. So, we know this is an ongoing reference design partnership. I've seen a lot of also outlets say, hey, Niantic's got an AR headset. It's like, please educate your readers as to what a reference design is. This is a cool thing to develop on top of, but we're still a ways out. But I think this paradigm of moving to this distributed processing multi-chip set thing is a promising move, especially because even companies as large as Meta can't necessarily wean themselves off of Qualcomm chips in the future. We've got some more details here on this slide where you can see how they've re-architected the PCB so it'll fit more in the arms of glasses. You can see the full list of OEM partners that they've listed on the right of this slide there. Also, keep in mind, they're working with Microsoft and Adobe, which got some mention, but if you're wondering to yourself, what's the future of the HoloLens look like after sort of the turmoil that division has been through over the past few months or throughout 2022, really, you maybe start thinking like, well, would it make sense for them to maybe partner with another hardware company? I'm not going to make guesses or name any names here, use the AR2 Gen 1 and try to get something that's closer to glasses? Maybe so. Some more things, Google developments rolling out this week. You've got Maps Live View getting updated with search in a few major cities, including mine. I'm looking forward to trying to give this a try and seeing, well, if there are really any, useful sort of useful results surface through this. Search is always sort of a matter of works well in some areas and not others. Geolocated search, that is. We'll see how it works with AR. Another interesting thing this week that I think, especially for anyone who's more in the computer vision side of this thing, working on AR that's focused on working for different types of people, different types of skin tones. Google announced a new photo set database that they're using for beauty sort of shopping lenses. So any kind of, lens, not to use in the Snapchat term here, but any kind of overlay that needs to be responsive to skin tones with makeup and things. We'll see how that ends up getting rolled into also just, plain old web search results for things like that. Latest Apple rumblings. If you've read my work, either at Virtual Vector or before this, when I was writing Reality Check for the information, you know that like when the Apple reporting is good, I'm more than happy to talk about it. When it's, hey, we hear that things are wrapping up, we hear that maybe from DigiTimes they're saying mass production targeted in March, these things can slip. We've known they've slipped in the past. And again, this is a mixed reality headset that we know precious little about the actual plans for content for it, besides the idea of Apple sort of making, maybe a defensible decision, but have people on its platform for development first, rather than bringing in other sorts of engines and platforms to build upon. We'll see how this turns out. I'd love to hear from anyone who's going to be at CES 2023 and see these things, or if you've got a Vuzix Connect, let me know. But the reveal of their ultralight glasses, which is being pitched as an OEM platform, so Vuzix moving out of the enterprise, heads-up display space with their glasses efforts, and saying, hey, partners, we would love to manufacture these things for you. Slap a label on it, tweak them to your specifications. The wild thing here being they're claiming 2 days of battery life for what look like genuinely very thin glasses, which means, okay, are we talking about a monocular waveguide situation here to eke that out? How often are these things actually displaying information to you? That's a question that I think will change that battery life answer drastically, but I guess we'll see there. See what happens there when we get there. And then Nreal, I wanted to note this in there, recently announcing that, hey, our light glasses now available in the US and other Western regions. They'll work with things like your PlayStation, your Xbox, your Steam Deck, which is a really smart move for these sort of birdbath optic glasses that are thicker, that you're not going to be wearing out on the street that much, but are designed around content consumption. That sort of, is it AR, is it not kind of use case. And I think like this will be a real sort of test based on how popular that category is. I've seen actually plenty of talk about people using the Nreals in that way, as to whether that branding set will really work for people. I think we've seen sort of half-hearted attempts with crowdfunding campaigns and things before, but this might be something more akin to like a real push into, okay, we're not quite doing AR, we're doing glasses for this gaming use case and so forth. We'll see how it goes. And then I wanted to squeeze this in there today, some interesting news on the BCI front, if you follow this stuff. And if you're, of the mind that this is the long term for AR, we're not talking headsets, we're not talking glasses or contacts, we're talking what's in your head, really. Go check out the announcement from Science Corp, founded by former Neuralink co-founder Max Hodak, where they're talking about a micro LED implant for the optic nerve as a way of communicating information directly, sort of to your head's wetware, let's call it, if we want to be really cyberpunky about it. Which just then joins a long list of some promising and some maybe less promising prospects for human-computer interaction and speeding these things up. We know that Meta is all in on EMG at the wrist. We know that EEG, companies like OpenBCI are still advancing the research front on that, even if it seems potentially further off for enterprise or consumer applications in a significant way. But this is something that I hadn't expected. This is not a thing I expected, the Hodak team to go in, and I might write about it in this week's newsletter. We'll see. So wrap up. I know there's a lot of, one of the sort of core fundamental things that I sort of hold true with Virtual Vector is, I don't want to be covering every last little shred of every, every drip of information out there, because sometimes, that just throws off the signal to noise ratio. But hey, if there's anything that you think I missed or that you want to hear my opinion on, throw it in the chat for this little talk Q&A portion, I guess. And if there's anything that you want to hear more about, I mean, generally AR, VR, immersive tech, whatever, do shoot me an email at matthew@virtualvector.xyz. One of the things about doing this independent, beyond just sort of like your support, is what keeps the newsletter going is that I want to have more of a dialogue about like what's getting covered, what's not being covered enough, where can I focus my efforts to really do something valuable for readers. And of course, if you're signing up either through this link or just through the regular website for free, just I encourage you, please do. Free subscribers are great too. You'll always get something, a complete section when the newsletter comes out. And I'd like to see more of you there. I'd like to keep doing this because I like thinking about this stuff. So hopefully I haven't gone too far over time. And I'm going to stop screen sharing now if everyone's got that. Oh, Andy, I can't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry, I had a headphone debacle there. Two questions for you. The first is, what do you feel regarding Microsoft's current role in the industry now that they potentially discontinued the HoloLens? What are your thoughts on that? And also their role with the U.S. Army with the IVAS system as well. Do you have any like thoughts to share on that?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of great reporting, and mostly out of Business Insider. I believe the Journal also had some stories about exactly what's going on with the HoloLens division at Microsoft at this point. Of course, very little confirmed publicly. And the thing about it is that, separate from what was going on with leadership there were already signs that Microsoft was looking to potentially partner, in terms of future endeavors with. I mean, you can see this just in what's been announced between Microsoft and Meta. Microsoft is thinking more about services in the long run being what they can provide as a difference maker for, call it AR, call it the metaverse, whatever, than thinking, okay, they have the experience on the hardware side, 20 years hard fought from doing Xbox, which is, no one, I don't think, would really say that that's an unsuccessful consumer brand, but you can look at what was said in the court filings for Apple v. Epic, like not a profitable business to be in the business of selling hardware. So for HoloLens, like, I don't know, I've talked to many developers who are like, it can't be beat in terms of this being a thing that at the right time came as a headset that we could develop and try things out on. And I've talked to folks who just hated working with it because it created a perception of, it's always going to be low FLV, it's always going to be clunky and this and that, that it may as well be a dead end. So I think some of the things that have been floating around for a while now about like Microsoft's going to work with somebody else to get a new AR device out there. You could interpret moves like Qualcomm announcing the AR2 Gen 2 and emphasizing a partnership with Microsoft as proof positive that maybe they'll still go in that direction, maybe even just Microsoft itself. Or you could look at just the state of the economy right now and go like, what's a product? What's a product line that'll be at least backburnered? Good chance of it, if not cut off, because they're just not going to see a strong return on investment, and they just might as well go full bore towards providing these services, providing the things that people will use on the headsets, on the glasses. I can't claim to talk to anybody who has like privileged knowledge about that. I think to some level, from what I've heard, a little bit of that future is unsettled. But I think, HoloLens or not, Microsoft should be believed their word that they're not done with this technology in the slightest. But I guess don't hold your breath for this sort of going in a better direction. And to the point about IVAS, like you just add that to the pile of what informs your speculation there. From the word jump, as soon as those things were being tested on the field, anything that was not a Microsoft authored blog post about how those tests were going. And this is, wades into a world of media that's pretty alien from the tech and entertainment spaces I've been in, where you're talking about like army contracts and so forth. But pretty universally, it was this thing needs serious work if it's going to get to the point where it's going to be something that they want to deploy far and wide in combat situations.
Yep.
Those problems, unfortunately, a lot of them are held in common with just what you want, out of a newer, better HoloLens anyway. So I don't think that I think I would say definitively, I don't think you can see, hey, they landed this, contract that is, if paid out over the course of many years, worth billions, as saving that hardware effort. I think that's not something that you can bet on.
Awesome. Great answer. Thank you. And just a question from Caitlin. She wants to know if you're going to be at CES.
No plans at the moment. So if there are folks here in the group that are going to be at CES, I'd love to know it, because I would like to make that happen if possible. But as Andy mentioned at the top of the call, I am also currently a graduate student. I've decided to spin these 2 different plates. And so that also has its demands on my time and travel and things like that. So program's going well, though. I made my own first AR thing, which I won't show here because it was very janky, but my own first AR thing a few weeks ago.
Nice. Amazing. Hope to learn more about it. Thank you so much for joining, Matt. It was good having you on.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, we'll move forward and on to the tonight's presentations. So excited to introduce tonight's speakers, those who are pushing the industry forward, and Matthew is as well, but together everyone's pushing the industry forward. And after each presentation, we'll have a 5-minute Q&A, so you can interact with the speaker. So feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat throughout, or message me or Barry directly, and we'll get the chance to ask with the speaker. Our first speaker with us tonight is Jebb, a journalist and entrepreneur who has worked for many years at the junction of media and tech. He is the managing editor of the Art newspaper, a really great newspaper, a really great website. That's not in there, I just added that. The industry Bible to the art world, published in London and New York. Art newspaper has a news website covering the junction of the art world with politics, economics, and society, and produces a print edition 11 times a year. It also distributes free daily newspapers produced on location at the main global art fairs held by the Art Basel and Frieze groups. Jebb writes for the Art newspaper about the art world's ventures in augmented reality, which we find fascinating, virtual reality, and Web 3.0. He set up the Art newspaper's XR panel to provide expert reviews for the art world during the global pandemic, when galleries and museums reviewed their use of viewing rooms, AR, VR, and 3D models. Lewis, it's really great to have you here tonight, and I look forward to learning more about what you're going to share with us. So thanks for being here. You're on mute. Sorry, I'm not sure. There you go.
Unmuted now, yeah.
Yeah.
You can all hear me
Thanks for
now.
joining.
Not at all. First of all, Andy, Barry, thank you for inviting me to be here this evening. It's a great honor to be speaking to the group. A moment, just get my presentation. May I just check you can see the full screen document?
Looks great.
Okay. And what I wanted to talk about tonight is not about the mechanics behind AR, but about how the art world is engaged with extended reality generally, but focusing particularly on AR for this group. And in particular, what happened early in 2020 when the art world, was faced with the challenge of people being unable to visit museums and galleries or go to fairs, and suddenly became much more interested in how they invited people into their galleries and how they sent their objects around the world digitally. And so I thought I'd talk a little about the Art newspaper's mission in this period to explain AR and VR to the art world, to gallerists, museums, and to art lovers. Look at some of the trends that emerged when we were covering this period, looking at some of the main players, both in AR and XR generally. In other words, who are the big players in the art world who are worth watching? And then, look at the future, given that the art world has a particular take on the visual. Image is worth 1,000 words, in AR it's worth 1,000,000. So a bit about myself. As Andy mentioned, I'm the president and managing editor of the Art newspaper. I'm writing about this sector. In my background, I started as a news journalist, and then I moved into news consulting. This is one of the most interesting brands that I helped create as the consultant editor. It was a brand new national newspaper in the UK in 2010, where newspapers were already seen to be dying out. Its parent newspaper had been sold for £0 several years before. The new owners saw an opening in the market for a quality newspaper which is extremely concise. 2010 is significant. Smartphones, social media is mature across the entire population of the UK. And so it was the first time where a newspaper was launched when the people producing it were able to communicate live with their audience. And this is one of the reasons it worked. And it's been sold twice, each time for a larger 8-figure sum. Naturally, it very rapidly developed its own website as well. It started as a newspaper being produced in a newsroom for an existing publication. Now it's entirely standalone, but owned by associated newspapers who are publishers of Mail Online and the Daily Mail. And the reason I mention this is it's all about talking about the timeline of my own background and how I came to VR and XR in the first place. This junction between media and tech. 2014, I was developing a slow news website of my own. And then Facebook bought Oculus, and I thought, well, if we're trying to slow people down and get them to think about the news afresh, why don't we do it in VR? So I changed the name of the company to Immersively Overnight. And in the succeeding years, we produced a number of firsts, starting in 360 video, first 360 news documentary in Hong Kong during the Umbrella Revolution, first use of green screen in 360 video, and then something germane to this group, a VR experience built in Unity, where there was a lot of augmented content. Because working with an artist called Gretchen Andrew, who was formerly a Googler, working on the Google Glass project, left Google, is now a full-time artist who hacks the internet to get her art onto the every homepage. And so we worked with her and we thought, well, if we're going to show a virtual art gallery, we need to show people more information. Remember, this is late 2014 when we developed it. It's before YouTube is supporting 360. It's before Facebook is supporting 360. So for distribution, we had to hack it entirely ourselves. The way it worked is that you'd move around the room, put in front of one of Gretchen's pictures, which is her take on Van Gogh's Starry Night. See the buttons below. Using the position of your head, you could select to play augmented content to give you more information. In this case, you play the play button and people could see the video that Gretchen took on with her Google Glass when she was sketching Starry Night in the gallery. And we tried about 5 or 6 methods of augmenting the content in this way. It was on an iPhone app in the super crude, but then seemed wildly exciting Zeiss headset, which you could put an iPhone into. And then we also distributed it by embedding a Unity player into a microsite. Anyway, learned a lot from that. Went on developing AR. Actually built a platform with Google, a Google grant to distribute 360 for the entire news industry, using AI to feed related content coming out of the videos. All of this, as you might imagine, was too soon for the news industry. So I parlayed my knowledge of this industry into journalism without completely, saying goodbye to the industry. Since earlier this year, I've been managing editor of the Art newspaper, which, as Andy said, is a newspaper which isn't just an art magazine, but it talks about the art world where it connects with politics, economics, and society, which is crucial to this group, because what we're going to look at is about the business of art and how it is engaged with AR. As at the Art newspaper, I've been writing since 2020. About the whole XR world. And as Annie mentioned, in 2020, we'd been talking a lot in the newsroom about how the art world was doing a lot of AR and VR. And a lot of my extremely experienced colleagues were saying, that was underwhelming, didn't know what to make of that. And I said, well, we should be explaining this industry to the art world. So I set up an expert panel from around the world of people who had made VR, made AR, were still live working industry, who had an interest in art. And so we produced an explainer form of journalism which answered key questions about, how good is the tech? Is what the creators are doing actually intrinsic to the tech? How good is the art? Do crude star ratings like they were movies, and basically make it more accessible. And then went live in 2020 when we're in the first stage of, first year of the pandemic, when the industry had to accelerate its, position. As I was saying at the beginning, that they suddenly found themselves, with nowhere to show their art physically. And so it went from fairly crude viewing rooms all the way up to high-end versions of VR and AR. So I'd just like to go through a number of areas of AR that we saw over the succeeding 2 years under various categories. Some of the first people into the field were, I described AR for fun. And one example here is Olafur Eliasson, rather remarkable artist, working with Acute Art, who are one of the main players in this field, and we'll come back to them later. And he released an app in July 2020 called Wunderkammer, and basically it's where he's created artworks related to weather, which you can place in your own home. So here he is in a very hip bar. Here he is with a glowing sun in his studio in Berlin. Here's one of our panelists with a rain cloud in her own apartment in Los Angeles. As I say, AR for fun, something which, as somebody said, as one of our panelists said, this is the picture postcard approach to Eliasson's art, AR for fun. Then there was plenty of museum standard AR, and the Metropolitan Museum in New York. Our panelists were extremely impressed by the 3D modeling of this semi-car stand. We saw a lot of 3D modeling in the 2 years, and this is one of the pieces that really stood out. The beauty of it, it was such a simply approached application available to everybody, which anybody could understand and could play with. It was, given it was New York Times, they did it beautifully. Then there were a number of people who used locations to potentially enhance the art. So Unreal City, also from Acute Art, was designed that you could walk up and down two sides of the River Thames in London and find triggers to view individual artists. So happened all our reviewers are either under lockdown or another part of the world. So of course the app can be used at home. So this is an example where you have an artwork by Krause, one of the best-selling artists in the world, another artist where you can get multiple pieces into your sitting room. As an example, where one of our panel has got multiple examples of art playing around. So it's AR for fun, but also location enhanced. And then one of the most recent things, which I wrote about for the art newspaper, which is why Andy approached me, was, extremely wonderful and fairly recently globally discovered artist Hilma af Klint, long dead, whose exhibition, his big 2018 exhibition at the Guggenheim in New York was a total sensation. This year has had an amazing year in tech. There's been, starting at the bottom end, as it were, in terms of ambition, there's a new movie about her life. And there are numerous, these AR and VR experiences that Acute Art produced with Frieze London Art Fair in mind. And in terms of being location enhanced, what they did was that they set markers on the pathway. There are two big locations at Frieze, the Frieze itself and then Frieze Masters. And they set markers so you could walk along and trigger seeing some of her remarkable art on the way. And getting a sense by having it outside that these examples of our work from the temple are really, the originals are really rather large. If you looked at them in your home and you weren't aware of the scale, by having it outside, it's viewed at the location of the fair, which gives it a nice time, but also it leaves you free to look at the images at giant scale. relative to your surroundings. And then one of the other most interesting approaches was AR for political impact. Los Angeles Times in October 2020 produced a fascinating Black Lives Matter application where they recreated pieces of photogrammetry using drones. The model you see there is based on a building, on a bar where where the George Floyd mural had been painted. Whole thing created with drone technology. So in the app you could look at the models yourself, and of course you could place them in your own locale. So this is an example where I've taken one of the murals from Los Angeles created through photogrammetry and placed it in front of the High Court in London, where a lot of cases, particularly around institutional racism in the British police, have been tried. And here in the park at the heart of the legal centre of London as well, another example. And one of the things that intrigued me about that is that you're looking at art and you're giving it new valency by placing it in other locations other than the one in which from which it was created. The Art newspaper has also dabbled in enabling our advertisers to sell their work on our AR app. We just have an AR capability on the publications app. And this is an example of a leading ceramics dealer called David Sassoon, whose artists create both in 3D and physically. So this is one of their artists' 3D models, which you can, and the idea was you could place it here. I placed it on the banks of the River Thames during lockdown, and people could then buy it and have it 3D printed for them, a Nautilus shell. And I think it's something that we're going to go back into in this coming year. We're just rethinking our whole approach to commercial relationships. We've got the capability. There are a lot of very good people in London making these things. But fundamentally, the thing that came out of our panel from 2020 to 2022 is that what really got the panel excited was editorial value. AR providing editorial value. This is a Sol the Wit app that Microsoft produced. And if we go to this in the App Store preview, you see just how much information the AR is used to trigger. So you go right through the artist's life, you can go through his process, you can actually scan one of his images, scan one of his pictures, and then get a lot of information about it. Ultimately, editorial value is what really got them excited. And then just to wind up, just some of the main players that we've encountered on the way. So for people who want to get their gallery online quickly in an enhanced viewing room way, with all kinds of additional augmented features being introduced all the time, there's a Danish-based company called Artland, who already have a lot of art fairs put their entire content on their platform. And they're a very go-ahead company. Then Acute Art, who I've mentioned a couple of times, they seem to be, as it were, the coming force in the art world for AR and for VR. And on the left there, you see where in virtual reality, they had recreated the imagined temple that Hilma af Klint imagined many years before Frank Lloyd Wright created the Guggenheim. She envisioned a Guggenheim for her art, something very similar. And for instance, with Hilma af Klint, they've not only produced AR and VR, but also produced NFTs which are being sold on Pharrell Williams' NFT site. And then Vortic, who I haven't mentioned before, but this is really interesting because it started by a gallery owner in London. And it was ready to take on any number of galleries' work and was available about a week before the pandemic happened. So all the small and medium-sized galleries in London went onto the app. And they all got together to sort of support each other. And one of the most interesting things is that they found that Unity and other game engines weren't good enough. So they created their own game engine for the art world. So hugely ambitious, very high quality. I think, worth watching because they seem to bring out new features, you know, every other day. So just to conclude, I think AR art has always been made for AR. You know, there's a close interlinking between VR, AR, and the art world, which is, you know, has all the world's images, you know, so we're under its fingertips. And I think they have a very definite future together. And, you know, I'll be following it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lewis. That was excellent. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, it seems like everyone really enjoyed it. That was so great. Thank you. Few questions that we have for you. The first one is that I received. And take this how you'd like. Does AR art imitate life?
Well, I think it certainly imitates life, and I certainly think it enhances it as well. Because I think one of the really thought-provoking things about all of extended reality is that it changes your relationship with time and space. You know, whether you're in virtual or augmented reality, anywhere on the spectrum. And I think that people have an emotional connection with art, so it's going to encourage them to rethink their relationship with time and space. And I think that, yeah, that's why I think art is so interesting in this space, because of the emotional connection. We're already, you know, with AR and VR, you're already rethinking your place in the world. I think always, whether it's something as crude as 360 video or as elevated as the highest form of mixed reality, it makes you rethink your place in the world. And when it's when you're actually engaging with something with such an emotional pull as art that you love, I think it changes life. Yeah.
I think the current barrier from having to access augmented reality, like through the phone or through web AR, do you think that takes away from the experience at the current moment? And how do you feel maybe headsets in the future could lend to these experiences?
I can't wait. I mean, I was excited by Matt's latest updates on that field.
Yeah.
Can't wait to have the specs. And well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because can't wait to have the specs, but also there's something quite interestingly, the fact that you have to make the physical effort with your phone, makes you think twice about engaging with it. What's going to be interesting when it's almost too easy to put stuff up? How much will we think about it? So that's what I can't wait for us to compare, because, as a sort of prism, for the smartphone, it takes an effort. You're limited in how you can position yourself and everything, and how you can play with scale. Not to be overlooked. And I wonder whether we'll as soon as we get the glasses, we'll soon start looking back saying, I thought more about it when I had to hold my phone up. So, but I really can't wait either.
Sure.
Like
yeah, sure. That's a nice perspective. Another question. I don't fully understand the reference, but can you throw a tomato can on a virtual Matisse?
Oh, well, yeah. So there've been a lot of incidences recently when people are protesting about fossil fuels and thrown anything from tomatoes to petrol onto famous paintings. And I wish people would do some more memes about that, because it's a very nice idea, is to do it, virtually in some way. Because so far, none of these famous pictures have been damaged, but not so long ago, there was a Poussin in the National Gallery in London about 5 or 6 years ago, which had to be very carefully cleaned. I mean, so not all of them have glass in front of them, the world's most valuable paintings, as it were. So that's what it's a reference to. It's to anti-fossil fuel protests. So yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun, and look forward to seeing the meme tomorrow. Sure, somebody in the group would produce it like that.
Awesome. And I'll close out with one more question. What is the value of site-specific art versus a piece of art that you could kind of take and experience anywhere?
I think that the whole point about the site specific is it makes it enables the creators and the site to generate excitement. You know, it's adding value to a visit. But the good thing is that naturally all these applications are available as it were wherever you are. But I think that two things. I think it makes it, as a developer, it makes you think again about, you know, what you're doing, especially if it's an interesting site. And I think it's a way of staging a, you know, like a virtual flash mob, as it were, at a place that it's, I think it's really the fun factor, and also, you know, and also it's a great social thing because you can share. I think the key thing is you can share your experience of viewing stuff at the site-specific thing. So if it was meeting, I think, well, this is a great social opportunity for people to share, you know, their screenshots of what they've been doing at the site. And then also, if you're an event organizer, it's a gift because it's something you're opening things up to many more people. So I think that's
awesome. Thank you so much, Lewis. That's
Thanks for having me.
So great.
Enjoying it. Thank you.
Yeah, great presentation. Awesome. Amazing. Yeah, thanks again. Okay, moving on to our next great presentations. We have folks from TRIPP here with us tonight. We have Krause, an XR experience designer, who's there in the chat. In the you can see her video feed. She is an author and keynote speaker, and the Chief Wellness Officer at TRIPP, a very important role, and also a founder of the XR consultancy MindWise, which she spoke about the last time she joined us at the meetup. She teaches about digital wellness as well at Stanford University. She has authored the books Designing Wonder, Leading Transformative Experiences in XR. I'll post a link on that, and Mindful by Design. I'll post a link on those books in the chat. Caitlin has advised global organizations, including Google, Meta, Oracle, TED, Evernote, as well as some universities. And she has created and run numerous collaborative experiences in social XR, fusing presence, storytelling, meditation, and emotional intelligence, which we had the opportunity to learn more about at the last meetup, and it was so fascinating. And joining Caitlin is Daniel Kharlas. Daniel is a product manager, founder, and meditation facilitator, and serves as director of product and technology operations at TRIPP. He has specialized in wellness XR applications for the last 7 years. And during that time, he has founded multiple XR businesses focusing on areas such as augmented reality, tourism, and AR biofeedback meditation apps, as well as virtual reality games for seniors and mental health. He holds a degree from Western University in the study of individual differences, goal setting, and measurement technologies applied to mindfulness meditation. He has published multiple articles on the topic, very important, and through meditation facilitation and the London mindfulness community, Daniel's making meditation accessible to all who want to experience it. He is also constantly communicating about meditation and its different applications for stress reduction, cognitive benefit, and improve mental health. And Daniel is passionate about the impact of XR technologies on wellness at home, in the workplace, and in mental health settings, and all really important topics, which we can all learn from. So I'm glad you both are here tonight to share more. So thank you.
Wow, thank you for that introduction, Andy, and so thoroughly introducing us. I see Barry, I'm going to admit Barry, perfectly on time, as I can't imagine this conversation coming from what Lewis just shared. Really,
It's just so wonderful to be able to participate in these types of dialogues from all corners of the world. And huge fan of the work that TRIPP are doing. I've definitely had my fair share of immersive meditation sessions in your universe, so it's really cool. I'll try and keep it short and sweet. We'll see how we go. I'm just going to pull up my screen and dive a little bit more into our world. Alrighty, cool beans. Great. Little quick background from myself. So I'm one of the co-founders at Phoria. As Andy shared, we're an XR studio here in Melbourne, Australia. We've been in the space for about 8 years, having a lot of fun just writing really the evolution of extended reality and trying to make sense of it, hopefully in meaningful ways. So I thought I'd share a little bit about our work, what we've been up to, as it feels very much like the theme for today is, yeah, we've seen some really wonderful advances in how XR and MR are really coming, into the mainstream. I've had my fair share of transformative moments in the HoloLens and the Magic Leap, and you get these amazing glimpses in terms of what's possible. And it's cool to kind of see a product that is really, opening it up in a unique way. So I'll jump into a little bit of our work. So first thing first, Phoria. We kind of have two pillars in the worlds that we work in. So we actually do a lot with spatial data. So 3D kind of scanning and mapping of reality, digital twins. And then on the other side is much more on the storytelling in XR. So how do we kind of create these stories with these physical spaces, making them accessible, as we heard earlier with the idea of how a museum maybe connects online in the middle of the pandemic. Or whether it be, for instance, a nature park here in Melbourne wanting to create an AR walking tour through the grounds. People can go and find these little hidden gems and have actual guided meditations out in nature, facilitated through technology. So yeah, we kind of combine and dance a line between these two pathways. Just to double check, my screen's coming through, right? I just want to make sure you can see the screen's changing.
It's looking blurry on my end, but I'm not sure if it's blurry for anyone else. I don't. It doesn't look good for you, Lewis and Caitlin.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So that's just my network.
Your expression there, Andy. I was like, oh, we got something going on. I won't go through all of this, but yeah, we cover the spectrum of XR. I'll focus more on our work in the 3D, AR and MR space, but I did just want to touch on it in a way that what we see transpiring with mixed reality is all these media types can really come into the fold. It doesn't just necessarily have to be explicit, augmented reality content in this instance. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the end. So just our journey, like 8 years, it's been a fun roller coaster ride, but we in the very early days, and this is why I take so much inspiration from the work that TRIPP are doing, we saw the power of these mediums to transport people, out of a hospital into a rainforest. And you can definitely recognize the utility. And we've done a handful of our own medical research projects to look at how VR can alleviate anxiety for children in hospital. And then shortly after that, we started thinking about how AR can really be, a more democratized tool to reach people, across the billions of devices in the world. And to Louis' points, we actually found some of the most exciting capabilities are in the art space. So you can see this piece here with the street artist here in Melbourne. We did 3D scans before and after his exhibitions. People could see through time and appreciate the art and the body of work that had gone in. And then, as Andy shared, we've done a bit in the social AR space. So thinking about AR to bring people together and have these unique types of stories. And I'll talk about that in more detail. And then recently, mixed reality, but also through WebXR, which is a really exciting, I guess, paradigm shift that we see taking place to skip the need to download apps and just jump straight into these immersive experiences. And it's something that, we feel is a very core component of driving the democratization of really mainstream adoption. And so very much through a lot of our work, we try and think about really the tools, in a way that they can have a positive impact. And TRIPP's such an amazing embodiment of that. And I think often, like I imagine many of us in the space, be talking to someone about XR and quite quickly they kind of link it to a Black Mirror episode, right? And so we're trying to think about how we diversify that and be a beacon for some of the positive use cases out there. And so we definitely have some wonderful ones underway at the moment that I'll be able to share a little bit more about. And then often the way that we talk about the work that we do, people get preoccupied with like, oh, it's a VR solution, an AR solution, MR. But for us, ultimately, it's the content and thinking about how that's surfaced across different devices and giving people really the capacity to ingest multiple different formats to shape their own stories. And this is my journey at the moment, is exploring this kind of dance of how all these media types can actually redefine storytelling. So we obviously think of storytelling as like the classic linear narrative, or if you bring in some interactivity, the first thing people think of is a choose your own adventure. But it feels like we're kind of, hit the ceiling in how we can shape stories, and when they become embedded in physical environments, that's a whole new format in terms of for creators to start, building on top of. So this is really the realm that we look at, and how all these media types can come in to shape these new types of spatial stories. And so in the VR space, we've been doing this for the longest at the company here, and having some really wonderful traction. Just recently, we're working with the UN. We launched a VR documentary that went to COP and to the UN General Assembly. And really simply, the tool to transport people, say, from New York into a small island in Fiji, and then to hear their story, of the community firsthand, and understand the changes that they're seeing, on the ground there. And then the way that we delivered this as well is we actually had an AR activation on site outside of the UN's head office, where we activated a sculpture, the Knotted Gun sculpture, and then gave people an interactive story to learn about this sculpture. Often we might walk past, maybe read the plaque, but all of a sudden we could bring all this immersive content the UN had sitting online to life on site. So really nice kind of AR VR combination, and so good to see the UN driving it in that way. And then for us, like we fundamentally see the biggest change is the democratization of immersive user-generated content. And so we've all seen it in our smartphones these days, and just so much insane good stuff's happening at the moment, whether it is rapid 3D mapping, what Apple are pushing out with object capture software, and then even nerfs now. Like, it is just insane. I'm a massive addict of making nerfs, so much that my wife tells me to constantly shut up about it. So some pretty cool, I think, examples of how this content is opening up and enabling us to digitize these environments and start augmenting them on, a user level, rather than relying on expensive scanning technology to do that. And so we've been playing with this for a long time, and we really see these digital twins are the key ingredient. And the way we think of this is the Internet of Things is really becoming the Internet of Places, right? And so all these environments are now being activated to the cloud, and we can access them remotely from anywhere, and then have a more meaningful experience on site when we're physically there. And so in the AR space, we heard a little bit about this, and I'll dive obviously a lot deeper into this now, seeing some amazing advances, whether it be, I think Google tracked like a billion impressions of their AR Tiger, coincidentally when Tiger King had launched, but seeing these massive uplifts in terms of just mainstream adoption, seeing museums, as we've heard, embrace these tools in such inspiring ways to tell deeper stories and connect people maybe to the things that might be invisible to them. And so for us, we want to also try to pave a pathway where we can demonstrate utility. And so we do a lot in the kind of architecture, engineering, construction space, where people can tap into sensors, read IoT information, maybe see through the walls, see the future designs, look back in time. It really genuinely feels like AR gives us a superpower. It's such a cool, I think, medium now, and to see it just be a common kind of toolkit is really wonderful. So we heard a little bit from Andy a second ago about Rewild. I thought I'd talk about this in more depth, because it's interesting in the sense of how mixed reality takes something that we made 3 years ago and literally reinvents it and makes it so much more powerful and robust. And so just a quick background, when we ran Rewild, it was a social AR experience that was extending upon a David Attenborough series, Our Planet. You could see 2D content on a screen and then have the 3D environment kind of mirror that in a way that you'll see the beauty of a rainforest, and then see the destruction of illegal deforestation, for instance, and then have it delivered through WWF ambassadors to encourage people to think more deeply and hopefully make a pledge and sign up for a cause to leave having changed, it would be the dream result there, rather than finishing a Netflix series and then starting up the next one. You know, how do we kind of take that moment and drive it further? And so we focused on this idea of rewilding these biomes and kind of the interplay of the impact that we're having on these ecosystems. And we chose 4 kind of episodes and themes, and then launched it across Singapore and into New York, and then also Bristol in the UK. And what was really inspiring was actually seeing the difference culturally in how people were picking up augmented reality. We had Singapore, it was run by these WWF staff, so they were really driving home some of the key messages and behavioral changes that they were trying to encourage. In New York, we had kind of casual Broadway actors, so they had a whole show going on, and it was a whole kind of song and dance of sorts that was much more performative and interactive on an ambassador level. And then we had in Bristol, it was run by this wonderful kind of future museum called We the Curious. And the staff are science educators, and they were looking at AR and they're like, wait a second, this is a whole new tool for us to get our messages across to help people understand on a deeper level. And so it was just epic to see it actually kind of transform into ways that we hadn't even anticipated. And so, yeah, you see these classic moments that still light my heart, just give it an extra couple skips a beat. And then, yeah, it kind of pinches yourself to think, you know, where it's going to head next. And so we, in 2020, like many of us, had huge ambitions. We had a few museum AR activations lined up, and obviously that was kind of stalled for the 24 months. So we pivoted and started thinking about how we could reach people where they're at, make a tool or an app that people could rewild their living rooms, maybe start designing and planning for the benefits of an immersive installation, and then have maybe a touring pop-up version. And so we started with thinking how, you know, these installs, AR installs, can leverage and benefit off greater infrastructure in the kind of physical sense. So you might have spatial speakers and woofers around you to have a deep vibration when the whale, you know, bursts through the ocean, or potentially multi-sensory elements to then trigger, you know, maybe heat when you see the forest burning, or just like mist if you're seeing a big whale splash, for instance. And so there was some really cool areas to think about, naturally a lot more complex and costly to deliver. So we kind of took a back seat on that, and then pivoted to thinking primarily about the mobile side and how we could optimize it to work on any device. So this is actually, if you search Rewild AR Nature Series, it's on iOS and Android. It's a free app. And yeah, it just really was a bit of a saving grace for us whilst we were all in lockdown here in Melbourne, just tinkering away. And we were fortunate to have this as our vocation through that period. And yeah, it's kind of, I'll kind of wrap up on this, but basically with Rewild, yeah, we realized like AR ultimately, you know, is a small window to a much more immersive world. And that's something that's now really feels like it's opening up in an exciting way through mixed reality. And so we've always been dreaming of MR, trying experiences like Tanandi. You just have these transformative moments where you perceive things that didn't actually happen. It's insane to think about, yeah, where it can actually head in the next 5 to 10 years. And so it's something that we've been really driving towards and wanting to have, you know, that double take moment where maybe you get electrocuted by something, or a character sits on your couch and starts talking to you. So this is something that we're, you know, aspirationally driving towards. And so earlier in the year, 3 months ago, Meta approached us leading into the launch of Connect and the Quest Pro. And they were like, hey, we want to build a WebXR mixed reality experience. So all in browser to feature color pass-through and some of the new features, plane tracking and spatial anchors, which has all been around in the AR space for a long time. And then also run it across platforms. So it could be AR, desktop, mobile, and mixed reality or VR in this instance. And so we had a bit of an insane sprint, but basically within 3 months, the first month was all creative, and we just landed on a little kind of cheeky sci-fi concept called spatial fusion. It was kind of inspired by a little bit more like Toy Story and Futurama, not taking itself too seriously. we heard from the TRIPP team, everyone loves a good portal. What happens when a portal opens up in your space and space debris starts shooting out? And so we snuck in all these funny little sci-fi objects and elements like that. Interestingly, we had to shoot the trailer about a month and a half before the actual project would launch. So definitely shooting a trailer on a kind of very early prototype was an interesting exercise, a story for another time, but we definitely got there. And then when we finally launched, yeah, we really wanted to push the envelope and the fidelity over the web. So we built it just in 3JS from the ground up, and had an amazing team in Bristol as well that we worked with, called Lusion. It's free, check it out. It works on Quest 2 and Quest Pro, spatialfusion.io. Definitely recommend giving it a spin and yeah, seeing if you can crack it. It does require the experimental room setup feature. So what was really cool is you can actually choose the dimensions of your space, and then the scene will dynamically adjust and kind of conform to your environment. So if you have a massive warehouse, there's a big fusion reactor in there that will be as big as that wall. If you're in a tiny little shoebox, then it kind of shrinks down to adjust dynamically. And that is one of the most wonderful things we've seen in MR in this way, where it is contextual and personalizing to your environment. And so just the last piece is here. Spatial fusion is quite left of field for the kind of work that we typically work on, but our goal right now is really to push forward this path of harnessing really immersive technology to help us foster a deeper connection to nature. And so we do a lot of reality live action work, so a lot of VR, 360, 180 content, 3D mapping as well. So we've been just actually mapping the Great Barrier Reef, for instance. And so we've seen the research, and I know the TRIPP team are leading the charge here just in terms of these abilities to connect with these wonderful environments. And so our kind of curiosity is, can we foster that in a city? Could you transform a warehouse into an oasis of sorts that people could have a therapeutic benefit? And so this is something that we're tinkering with at the moment, and we've seen it, you know, with Meow Wolf and Artec House in New York City. Like, they're amazing spaces, but not everyone has $60 million to fund an installation. So how do we enable something more scalably through mixed reality headsets, where you can maybe get 10 of those and spin up something? And we've seen another studio, I think in Chicago, called Verse, doing some cool work in that space. And so what we've done at the moment is we've gone back to Rewild, right? Like we've taken this amazing experience that is constrained to the phone, and we've just popped it open through a headset. In a week, we could just port it all across, and it's running in mixed reality, which is just such a testament to the AR MR synergy there. And so the plan is at the moment is to play with some of the content that we've been working with, and then test these spatial stories where it is 3D content, it's 3D mapped environments, you've got real-time lighting and plankton in the water and some fun pieces there that is contextual in your space. Of the real world is really our goal there, is to connect people with nature in that way. So yeah, these are just some good old Midjourney concepts that I've been tinkering with, but really wonderful and exciting to see. It just feels like mixed reality's finally crossed the tipping point now with the Quest Pro. So super excited to see where it's going to head. And this is just a real quick demo. And it was my nan's 91st birthday on the weekend, so I ran my whole family through this just to get some feedback. And you know, whether it was my little 7-year-old niece or my 91-year-old nan, yeah, it was so just amazing to see their responses and reactions, and in MR in a way that felt safer as well. I think being connected to that and looking across at your loved one that's sitting next to you is really an ingredient for a better experience. Yeah, so that's me. A fun space. Really appreciate the opportunity to share some of our work. Would love to connect with all of you. Definitely we'll be joining the community and tracking some of the amazing progress coming from all these movers and shakers out there. So yeah, really grateful to share some of our world.
Thank you, Trent. That was excellent. It was really great having you. Let's see, Barry, do we have any questions? Let's see here. Okay. I have one. I think Barry's on mute. Hold on, I'm just pulling it up. Did you say there is a space in New York to experience?
Yeah, when we went for, I'm not sure what specific question in particular, but we launched Rewild in Dolby Soho. That was in 2019, so that was just a short-term activation. But I was just recommending our tech house. It's not AR or MR, but it's a LB location-based experience, like an immersive space. It's epic, so good. I had the chance to check that out in 2019, and Refik Anadol's an incredible artist. The work that he's doing there is changing the game.
Sure. Cool. Another question, and Barry is actually muted. Sorry, Barry. Let's see here. Are you making any content for children in education?
Yeah, great. We're doing a few different projects at the moment in the education space. So primarily what we've been doing with our 3D scanning work is kind of giving the tools to schools and teachers once they've scanned their, say, classroom, is we have a platform called Captured, and you can use a tool called Creator Studio and then start staging 2D, 3D content within it. And so as an example, we have like some STEM schools here in Victoria, and they've been creating recycling centers where they'll stage it on a computer in the class together using Sketchfab assets. They'll pull in all these just free assets and then build out a recycling center, and then hand it over to the kids, and then they'll get out their tablets and then walk through the classroom and have these AR field trips of sorts, but now in the classroom. So that's really fascinating in the way that ultimately, I think for schools especially, is it needs to be democratized and made affordable rather than an expensive flash in the pan thing. And so seeing like web-based solutions that people can actually start pulling in off-the-shelf assets like from Sketchfab, and then building these whole learning modules around like key themes. And then we're working on one at the moment around chemistry. And so, yeah, it's definitely, I think, early days, but XR in the education space, I think, has so much wonderful opportunity. And to see that kind of given, I think, into the hands of the students and teachers to shape their own content and courses is where things get, yeah, I think, much more scalable and impactful for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Trent. And as far as the experience themselves, do you have some type of design process that you use to create these projects? How do you go about developing such vast augmented reality experiences and mixed reality?
Yeah, definitely. I guess in the early days, like Rewild was an interesting one, right? Because it's very much like from the studio we run, containing the scope, you know, to meet the timeline and budget. So for instance, Netflix had 8 episodes, and they're like, cool, we want to just make sense to create 8 different experiences, and they're all 10 minutes long. And then you're like, I don't think there's any chance in hell that we could build an 80-minute experience in 3 months. So very much narrowing that down in terms of like the user journey runtime is the easiest way for us to think about the body of work and what goes in, right? And so if you were to go, cool, all right, 4 5-minute experiences, 20 minutes end to end, that feels much more manageable. And then we have more recently been kind of designing and staging some of these concepts in 3D. Love Tiltbrush in the early days, and one of our creative technologists uses Gravity Sketch basically to concept out these scenes. So as an example, if we were creating a real world align AR or MR activation, the first thing we would do is scan the space, right? Like it's kind of like trying to design something without actually being able to physically get there, and then staging the scene with, you know, gray boxing in 3D as you would, and then kind of feeling how the, you know, form and flow is. So for instance, there's a scene in Rewild when the whale comes through. And so if it's too big, it might literally swim through you and you'll have a poor experience. Whereas if it's too small, it won't feel as, you know, impactful and immersive. So being able to work with those tools in a really streamlined way in 3D, I think is really a much faster way to understand that user experience and to design for that. And then as a studio, we just live and breathe in Miro and Slack, and we use Asana a lot. Yeah, amazing tools. And then more recently, just started running our whips in Spatial. So that's just been a fun way when we have all these 3D creators to do show and tell, and then all of a sudden they're just pulling in all these assets they're creating rather than being often trapped in these small little windows. Yeah.
That's awesome. I appreciate the insight there, Trent. Cool. And two more questions just to close it out. Do you have a specific device that's your favorite to use? I know you brought up Quest Pro a bit. Would you consider that one your favorite, or?
Yeah, I guess like definitely just in a general practicality, you know, running my iPhone is amazing from the ability to create immersive content. So specifically, I use Polycam and Luma a lot at the moment. So I think, you know, going to a museum, for instance, I was looking, we have our National Gallery here and they have a cool exhibition. And I was just like, oh, I might go and scan that. Obviously, there's some ethical things around how we dance that line, but the ability to create that content is really the first phase for at least me. And then I think in terms of pushing that into, you know, other devices, it's amazing to see, yeah, the Quest 2 reach about what, 15 million units. One of our titles, Ecosphere's got 1 million downloads at the moment, which for a pretty, you know, a free app, and it's great to see. And so I think the Quest 2 was amazing more from the changes that it drove in the market and the fact it is, you know, pass-through enabled, whilst it be, you know, black and white, is still, I think, an amazing entry point. Like, I don't think the Quest Pro is for everybody, right? But for us, like our goal at the moment is to basically get our hands on about 10 to 20 Quest Pros, and rather than the assumption that everyone's going to own a headset, you know, in the short term, is have a physical location that people come to and have a transformative experience, and to have that hardware on hand, and in a way that alleviates a lot of the infrastructure costs, where we can now bring all the digital immersive multimedia content, you know, to life in MR. I feel is a massive enabler for anyone that would be thinking about starting a business in this space, because that, yeah, cost of investment to get involved feels like a huge leap forward. And the Quest Pro is pretty special. Like in Spatial Fusion, it is both VR and MR. There's a moment you jump inside the ship and you're looking around and you're in this kind of VR world, and then you jump back out and there's asteroids flying around. And so I think that benefit of being able to dance between both lines is a really key ingredient, that you can kind of tell stories in different ways. So yeah, Quest Pro's been a good one, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just one more question, just to close it out. I have it here. It's from a totally different lens, but and I know you touched on it, but what are some specific brands that you've worked with in the past?
Specific brands, was that?
Yes, like what brands have you worked with?
Yeah, yep, yeah, definitely. I guess most recently been doing a lot of work with Meta, the WebXR team, so trying to push more in browser-based experiences. And we heard a little bit about the Reality Labs. I'd recommend connecting if you're a creator with the new product experimentation team. So that's one of their endeavors, to work with other XR startups around the world and help grow the ecosystem. So yeah, we've been fortunate to get some wonderful impact projects in that space. And yeah, Meta's investing a lot in that space. And then I guess we did a few things with Twitter, pretty controversial at the moment, but more in the Asia Pacific area around like community building, planning for events, immersive installations and things like that. Netflix, Google and WWF for Rewild was a wonderful project, very illuminating, seeing how these kind of different organizations, you know, operate, how slow some can be and how quick others are. So that's been really wonderful. We do a lot more just in kind of the standard real estate and property space, because our initial goal when we started the company was to use spatial data to automate the whole marketing suite of a house faster and cheaper than making a floor plan, because we're pretty frustrated with realtors and the kind of control they had on the market. So we definitely want to shake that space up and give more power back to the buyers and sellers. Yeah, a few other brands in the impact space, like the United Nations has been amazing. very illuminating as well, seeing, you know, they want to do good, but often, you know, bureaucracy is their biggest enemy at times and can slow them down. So yeah, it's amazing to try and push the envelope and get approvals for certain ambition at the same time. Yeah, yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Trent. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Appreciate the opportunity to
Yeah,
catch up
and,
and share, and yeah, really inspiring to hear from the rest of the speakers as well. Appreciate it.
thank you. And Lewis had a comment up there. He mentioned outstanding work, Trent, really expanding the medium. So yeah, it's really great to hear from you, Lewis, about the work. Yeah, and Caitlin, thank you as well for joining. Love learning about your work, and your work with TRIPP is really great. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you. And you might have seen in the chat, Daniel had to run to his own birthday celebration. So he wrote to me and just, you know, expressed his genuine gratitude, and just, you know, this is among like minds. So it's really inspiring to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you. Really inspiring. Really enjoyed it, and really enjoyed all the talks. Really wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks, Lewis. Love your writing. So appreciate it, guys. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. And with that, we'll close the meetup. Stephen, Bruce, great to see you. I look forward to chatting, and I look forward to seeing you all at the next meetup. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
You too. Thanks.
Take care. Thanks
Bye.
again. See ya. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.